Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. And this is your new moon forecast. And this new moon is happening in the sign of Sagittarius at 28 degrees. So I thought it would be of benefit to talk a little bit about what Sagittarius is archetypally and how this is really corresponding to the astrological conversations that are happening during this new moon. So let's talk about this. Before I do, I did want to mention that my holiday special is still running through December 31st, so you can check out my website if you're wanting to have a session with me at a discounted rate, my gift to you all for the holidays and for, helping me have this as my career. So let's talk about Sagittarius as an archetype, specifically pertaining to this new moon. And what you need to understand about this new moon is that we have Venus and Juno balsamic to this sun that is conjunct the moon, which is reflecting a new moon. So, although Venus and Juno are balsamic to the sun, the moon is actually in a new phase to all of this energy, the sun, Juno, and Venus. So, what is this reflecting? On the one hand, we have relational dynamics, Venus, around showing up authentically, honestly, sincerely, and with compassion at the forefront, and whether or not we related to others in an overcompensatory type of way because we were relating to ourselves in this way. And how it is that we are wanting to show up in the world and also understanding and recognizing our personal truths, not beliefs, but truths. What is true? Okay. And yet, this is where we've given purpose and meaning to our lives in the past through these dynamics. And now we're meant to culminate them in order for Sagittarian expansion to occur further. So then we have the moon that is in a new phase to the sun, Juno, and Venus. This means that we're starting this new evolutionary cycle pertaining to the emotional dynamics dealing with our authenticity, our sincerity, our compassion, our interrelatedness to others, and what it is that is nurturing us within these dynamics. So, all of this, including Mercury, which I will get to here in a bit, which is also in Sag, is these Sagittarian energies are all um, ruled by Jupiter in Cancer, which is retrograde. So Jupiter and the moon are in mutual reception, speaking to and reflecting the dynamic and principle that um, this is more easily accessible. There's more of an integration that can happen because these two planets are working together harmoniously. Okay, so it's when we make a conscious effort to actualize these dynamics, there is a blossoming, a growth, an expansion that happens with more of an ease, with more of an accessibility. It doesn't feel so tough. It doesn't feel so hard to be able to access these dynamics. So, what is Jupiter in Cancer retrograde reflecting, though? Well, it's this dynamic I've been talking about for quite some time. It's about this need to expand upon our emotional truths and to throw off beliefs that have become a source of over-identification, a sense of security, and where those beliefs actually aren't in alignment with our authenticity or our personal truths. Okay? So we've all had dynamics, it's a universal experience of where we have such a conviction around a belief that we don't even realize that it could be delusive. We don't even realize that it could be harmful, that it could be harming us, and how we validate ourselves, how we nurture ourselves, how we um, uh, move throughout the moment to moment, day by day in this lifetime, right? And so there's this need for us to really clear out beliefs that are not um, helping us to grow, to evolve. And yet, through that clearing and that decluttering, we create space to expand upon what is actually emotionally honest and true for each one individually. So, within this, especially with Venus being a part of this kind of conglomerate going on during the new moon, it brings forth the Sagittarian archetype, um, one of many, but a bottom line is Sagittarius corresponds to natural law. And one of the natural laws that is specific to Sagittarius is the natural law of compassion. And how, when we have compassion for others, we access the ability to naturally interrelate with others. And this brings forth the dynamic of empathy, which is a Pisces dynamic, right? And we've got this new moon that is squaring Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So it's bringing forth this need to act on empathy, not sympathy, but empathy in order for us to experience compassion with others and within ourselves, especially our emotional truths that we are wanting to expand upon. When we're doing this with others and we're accessing compassion through empathy, um, we are able to interrelate with others in a natural way. Okay, because how we're relating to ourselves, Venus, Taurus, and how we're valuing that, how we are understanding it, how we're giving it meaning, um, that is reflected in our relationships with others. Okay. And so when we are naturally relating, and we're being interrelated with others, that's where we can also access the other natural law that is part of the Sagittarius archetype. And that natural law is the law of relativity. What is authentic and true for me, especially on an emotional level, Jupiter in Cancer, Moon in Sagittarius, might not be the same for you, but yet two truths can occur, right? What's true for me may not be true for you. But whenever I understand this, I can have compassion because I can empathize and put myself in your shoes and understand where you're coming. And so, therefore, I can interrelate with you in a healthy way. So, let's break down what the definition of interrelated is because interrelatedness is an archetype of Sagittarius. So, interrelatedness is the ability to relate or connect to one another, having a mutual or reciprocal relation. This is bringing in Venus, by the way. This is also each part can affect and influence the others. Okay? This is where we're thinking about how Sagittarius can also correspond to propaganda, right? which is not a natural expression of this, but how propaganda actually influences others and then it affects them. Um, Another dynamic would be our relatedness with our community and with our community's values, or how our community as a whole can have an effect and an influence on us. It can be a natural expression or it can be a distorted expression. So I want to get into a natural expression of this whenever we are thinking about the Venusian principle that is really highlighted within this new moon as well, speaking specifically to interrelatedness, compassion, empathy, and understanding the law of relativity and how these dynamics can affect and have an influence um, within all of our relationships. Okay, so the natural expression as a bottom line would be having a positive effect for each person who is relating through understanding the natural law of relativity and understanding each person's personal truths and honoring them with compassion and empathy, right? That's true for you, and I can accept that. I can put myself in your shoes. I can understand this. It's not true for me, but I can understand that you are unique and you're your own individual. And so I can see how that is what you give meaning to. That's what you value. That is how you feel, what you're experiencing emotionally, right? The distorted expression of this is where it's influencing others for negative gain, um, or to the detriment of other people and who we're relating to. All right. And that comes through the form of convincing and converting those who we are in relationship with, all right, through our beliefs, trying to convince and convert them of our beliefs or of our truths. So this is actually where it's harming others through, it can be deceptive means, it can be bulldozing them, it can be brainwashing them, or it can be trying to overcompensate for the insecurity we feel when someone is not um, saying, yeah, I feel that way too, or that's exactly what I think, that's exactly what I believe, right? So there's this huge dynamic, and I can give two examples of this. Okay. Um, so the other week I had someone reach out to me who was going through something, and they were starting to recognize um, their own personal truths through the crisis of being confronted with people not through people lying, right? And so whenever this person reached out to me and we were talking, um, I was validating their experience. And I also could put myself in this person's shoes and understand what they were experiencing and how that was frustrating. I wasn't playing devil's advocate with them. I was just validating that. Um, because this person was intuiting and having an instinctual reaction to when people were lying to them, right? And then feeling confused that maybe they were wrong. So this is this dynamic that can be coming up. Um, and yet, whenever me and this person ended the conversation, they said to me, I know that my truths and how I'm feeling. And I really appreciate that you were able to validate this, even whenever I was talking about things that you might not have experienced, which there were some of the things that this person was telling me about I have experienced, but not all of them. But I was able to understand what felt true for them. Okay. So that had a positive impact for both of us. On some levels, it was validating some of my experiences, even though that they were different. So, two things can be true. And yet there was a simpatico because we weren't trying to convince or convert each other of this is how you should be feeling, this is what you should be thinking, da 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 da, even though some of our experiences weren't the same. Then I had this other situation where I expressed concern and spoke my emotional truth about something that was going on. And in return, what I experienced was someone who started to tell me that I was not right, that I wasn't, uh, you know, that I was betraying them. I mean, all of these things. And what this is corresponding to is when we are over identified with a belief that has become conditioned, it can be where we are seeking security from within, even though it can be harmful. It can be harmful to ourselves or it can be harmful to others whenever we get upset that they are saying that's not what I feel to be true. And this is actually how I'm feeling, and this is my truth. And someone's dismissive or they start projecting, right? This is the distorted expression of this. And that is corresponding to when we are interrelating with someone and there isn't a reciprocity, empathy, compassion, that can actually have a negative effect on both. On the other hand, with the first situation I gave, that was a positive expression because there was a positive um, outcome through both of our actions of understanding that both of our situations were relative, right? And there were some things that we understood that were in alignment, and then other things that we weren't necessarily in alignment with, but there was this reciprocity and having compassion and empathy for the situations that each one of us had been in that yet we didn't really get to experience. And it was validating, not in a delusionary way, but in a healing type of way. Okay? So with this new moon, there's this need for each one of us to individually look at where we might be over identified with beliefs stemming from the past and where we might be defending beliefs um, through defensiveness, through trying to convince and convert others, or in a very, very sad expression, is through overcompensating and or through beliefs becoming uh, self-fulfilling prophecies. Okay. Um, Meaning that we're so identified with a belief or a message that's become a belief through some type of experience that we've had, whether it be trauma or others conditioning us around our values, our needs, and it has nothing to do with our authenticity and what's true for us, and how we can start projecting our own dynamics because we're not able to confront the belief that can be a delusion or delusive or where we're giving ultimate meaning. And so the convincing and the converting, and then the being judgmental and if it could be attacking or it could be even acquiescing and abandoning our truths. That is where it can become detrimental territory. Um, and so this is the Jupiter retrograde. It's wanting us to throw off these dynamics and to really connect with what's authentic and true for each one of us. that doesn't have to deal with trauma, projections, trying to convince and convert others, because therein lies the essence of the truth. The truth doesn't need to be explained, it stands for itself, even if others don't want to believe it or to acknowledge it or to have compassion for it, because it's challenging their security. And that's why there's that expression that the truth doesn't need to be defended. So there's these dynamics with this new moon coming up around this type of archetypal energy. And we have Venus balsamic to Juno, and both of those are balsamic to the sun. And this is really reflecting this need to relate to ourselves differently. And Venus is square to Saturn in Pisces. Through having compassion for ourselves, um, around where something became a self-fulfilling prophecy, for how that then attracted things that we actually didn't need or that weren't necessary. But we were attracting it because, I mean, on some level, we did need it so we could confront the delusion or the ideal or where we were giving too much meaning, right? I had this experience with an old relationship in my early 20s. I didn't really understand why I was attracting this person who was deceptive. They were lying. They were very sadistic, all of these things. And it's because I have Venus in Sag. I was overcompensating and I was actually living a living lie because I was not being my authentic self. I was afraid to be my authentic self because I had felt alienated, Sag, um, around being myself, or I had, anytime I spoke a truth, I had been ostracized for it and projected upon for it. And so I started overcompensating. And I was told all of these things about myself at a young age that through those messages, I internalized them as a belief. So therefore, I was attracting these people um, that would just reiterate that until I fully confronted it and I realized like that's not who I am and I don't want to attract that anymore. Okay? So there can be these dynamics that we're understanding, that we're recalling, that we're able to have an awareness around right now. And it can happen in way different ways than what I'm relating, but the archetypes of what I'm stating are there. So this is also having us with Juno there, looking at how we've committed to others. Did we show up authentically? Were we able to be emotionally honest with them? Or did we deny that? There's still a square going on between Venus and the South Node and Lucifer. Did we deny expressing our truth? Did we deny our own emotional reality because we were trying to keep the status quo because we were giving so much meaning to a relationship instead of being able to really nurture that truth within? So this new moon is really reflecting um, understanding our truth and diff and the difference between beliefs that could have become self-fulfilling prophecies, or where there were distortions and negative patterns of interrelatedness, where there wasn't of reciprocity, where it had a negative effect and influence on you, or vice versa, right? Where I feel like I'm just going to stay here and take this because this is what I'm used to and it's what I'm secure and because it's all I've ever known. And I'm continuing this pattern of not speaking, not expressing my truth on an emotional level and not being able to walk authentically because I'm afraid if I do that, then this will go away. I'll lose this person or this community or um, this job, right? And so it's like asking for us to even look at when you were devoting yourself to that relationship, what was the effect on you? And if it was negative, it's about really purging that dynamic. That way, there can be a healing within the consciousness. Venus square to Saturn. Um, and there's a need to act on this on a conscious level and to self-reflect and to take accountability. And what I mean by accountability is knowing what is yours and what is not. If you are someone who has had a pattern of not expressing their emotions honestly out of fear of projections, ridicule, um, people being abusive towards you, all of this, it's really asking for us to reflect on the why in order for us to know I understand that my choices led to these situations and relationships, but two things can be true. I didn't deserve that. And I don't have to deal with that. I can walk and exist in this world as a whole, authentic, compassionate, empathetic, honest person. And if I am projected upon, or if there is a negative influence and effect when I'm relating to someone, and they're not able to hear me, Venus. They're not able to put themselves in my shoes and hear where I'm coming from. Or they believe that I'm something else that they're actually doing, and yet I'm being told I'm doing it. And so I'm overcompensating by trying to prove, by trying to convince and to convert that that's not who I am. No, da 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 da. This is wanting to wrap up. And it's saying that you are not accountable for how someone else reacts to your truth, but what you are accountable for is whether or not you're going to be a part of your own suffering dealing with that dynamic. Are you devoting yourself to relationships in an unhealthy way? Is it overcompensatory because you are wanting validation outside of yourself, or you are emotionally invested in something, and if they would just hear me, or if I could just get into this and say it the perfect way, the best way, then maybe they will actually hear me and we can have some reciprocity and this can have a positive effect. Mercury is squaring the nodes in Sagittarius. The resolution node is that south node in Virgo. It is still square Lucifer. It is asking for us to confront actual reality and to not deny our truth, right? It is not, it's asking for us to revisit emotional dynamics where we made excuses for others or we made excuses for ourselves and we denied our voice and our ability to express this out of fear or out of persecution. This is about understanding that actually how someone reacts to you whenever you are being sincere and authentic and honest with them and you are expressing your emotional truth, that gives you all the information that you need to understand. Are they able to have reciprocity, or are they affecting you in a negative way? Are they trying to influence you in a negative way? Right? And then with the moon in a new phase to all of this energy, it's asking for us to just continue to show up honestly, authentically, and to express those emotional truths. Um, and that it doesn't need to be defended. That if we're feeling we have to perfect something in order for someone else to hear us, that person may not be willing to hear our truth. And that means that we have to decide, is this something that I can stay in and commit myself to, knowing that I might be receiving messages of someone trying to influence me or to convince me of something otherwise, right? Is it going to create harm every time that I speak up about something and then I'm projected on. So it's also bringing in this new phase energy of really acting on our desires to intuit Sag on an instinctual level, correct action around our relationships with others, right? So Jupiter is also in conjunct Venus. This is a gibbous phase, meaning that there can be this internal crisis within around how we are feeling about ourselves stemming from beliefs. Or also, it can be how are we nurturing and becoming self-reliant through expanding on our truths? Our emotions at this point in time are our teacher. It's giving us a lot of information to expand upon, and we're meant to trust ourselves and our gut. Jupiter is still trining Neptune and Saturn. There's this need to really trust ourselves about what it is that we're feeling and experiencing on an emotional level and intuiting. And so the internal crisis can be, can I show up this way? Can I show up, and how is that going to feel? Am I going to be alienated? What's going to happen? Or am I going to deny my truth out of fear of rejection or inferiority or ridicule or projection? Okay. And then this is interesting because the new moon is in conjunct Uranus retrograde and Taurus, and this is a full face. So this is where we come face to face with others, the power of others and the power of ourselves. And so this is really asking for us to liberate from dynamics that we've over identified with, um, where they're based in beliefs and not truth, right? And this, when we are able to show up as ourselves in a natural way, in our own unique individuality, there's a transformation that is happening from within on our through our inner relationship to self. We're relating to ourselves differently. And the biggest key between the new moon and conjunct Uranus retrograde is not just throwing off the past with the value associations and where we've given meaning and how that has had a direct result on our inner relationship to self, but it is also where we are called to observe the emotional dynamics when we are triggered by others, and how, when we have compassion for ourselves, we can have compassion for others, and that this transforms how we're relating to them. This is also where we are, I want to make sure I articulate this correctly, where we are learning that our power and our value lies within being different. And being different, meaning our unique and authentic individual selves on a soul level, is actually needed and necessary. Okay? So, this new moon is square to Neptune, and it is in a last quarter square. This is where we are needing to cultivate and to have a conscious effort to create action around showing up authentically. It's where we're also needing to make choices around where we are needing to culminate and dissolve all types of ideals where we've given meaning, um, ultimate meaning, values that have had a negative consequence on how we nurture ourselves. All right. And like I said, Venus is squaring Saturn. So there is this linkage to when we are doing this and we're making the conscious effort and we're acting on our desires to do this, it emotionally nurtures us and it creates self-sustainment. We feel and we get to experience true inner self-reliance on an emotional level because we know who we are and we're not trying to be something different. We're not living a lie in that way. Venus, Juno, the sun, and the moon are all trining Chiron retrograde in the sign of Aries. And Chiron is ruled by Mars in Capricorn. So this is where we get to reflect on wounds. And yet, through this reflection, there is a healing quality because there is an awareness that can come through with all of the Sag trining Chiron. It's where this is teaching us about our wounds. It's giving us medicine. It's changing our awareness through expanding and having compassion. And there is this need for self-determination around this, right? Because who wants to continue to walk into the world um, with not taking stock of where wounds are perpetuating dishonesty or overcompensation or delusions, right? I've seen this play out so much this past week. So there's this need to objectify and to reflect and to take accountability for what's ours and what is not, and to also understand that there is medicine within this. There is wisdom that is created through the self-reflection of all of this, that it's healing, that it's fostering a more authentic relationship to self, which is going to transform how we relate inwardly, and that is going to transcend old limitations, and then it is going to help magnetize us in a different way that then attracts different dynamics that continue to further help us to expand upon our personal truths. All right. The other thing is, I want to say is Mars and Capricorn, it also rules Cassandra. It doesn't just rule Chiron retrograde, it rules Cassandra. And so Cassandra's ruler, Mars and Capricorn, is square to Cassandra. And there's so much energy of this week that is linked to Mercury and Venus. Mercury and Venus are directly linked to Cassandra. Cassandra is where there can be a complex and self-esteem and self-worth issues because we weren't believed, heard, understood, or seen for a truth that we were expressing, and instead we were projected upon. It challenged someone, and so we could have been ostracized or persecuted or been oppressed for speaking a truth. We were alienated because of this. And the consequence of that is that it has created a wound around the inner relationship to self and how we relate, Venus connecting to Cassandra. But yet we are meant to recover our ability to express ourselves, Mercury, and to speak truth, Mercury, and to recover our own inner knowledge around this that is gleaned through the wisdom of reflecting, Mars and Capricorn ruling this. So there can be dynamics this week where you might need to act on speaking truth for your own healing and having your own personal voice of authority, Capricorn, within that, and understanding that the truth doesn't need to be defended, and yet you don't need to um, take on others' judgments, projections, beliefs for speaking the truth. That is actually taking action. Aries, Mars can help you through the feedback that you get from expressing yourself and not denying it. Mercury square that South Node in Virgo. Um, where you can recover a sense of authority. And that authority is going to come through the counteraction of speaking truth and self-expression on an authentic, sincere, compassionate, and empathetic level. Whatever the feedback is that you receive is going to help you to make a judgment call, Capricorn, but yet you need to trust your intuition, Sag. If something does not feel right, or instinctually you know that something is wrong, it's about having the courage to state that and to be able to stand by that choice because you know that it was honest and that it was sincere and coming from a good place, coming from a compassionate place, coming from a loving place, that you are trying to interrelate in a natural, healthy way. Yet, if the person is trying to relate to you in a negative way, that is about making a judgment call because we are not here to suffer. We are not supposed to take on the guilt, the shame, and the judgment of others that they cannot name within ourselves. So there's a lot of work around this new moon around not having to defend your truth and through observing what is going on emotionally within you. It's like all of a sudden I spoke something and now someone's saying all of these things that aren't true. It's about not taking that in and not internalizing it. South Node and Virgo, because you know your truth. You know the truth. And that has nothing to do with it. And so when we know the truth, we don't seek validation outside of ourselves. We're not trying to convince and convert other people of a belief to get them to be on our side. It just stays there. It hangs out. It stands alone. People can project what they want, they can try to alienate, but there is something that is really emotionally validating when the truth is understood within. Because people can say and do whatever they want. And I'm telling you from personal experience, what used to bother me in the past about people spreading lies or trying to convince or convert other people about this or that or whatever, it doesn't affect me in the same way anymore because I know that that's not about me and I can see it clearly. And I don't have to be malicious. I don't, you can just stand up. Malice is always going to come through pertaining to this Sag dynamic, through convincing and converting others as a way to triangulate possibly, so that, they can alienate someone else. Or it can come through trying to convince and convert other people because you're not being honest with yourself. And if someone agrees with you, then it can validate the lie, the belief, right? This is not about that. It's about confronting that and taking stock, coming into an awareness, and stepping into your truth, period, and walking that. And the more and more you set out on this journey, Sag, the path opens up and expands more. And it's healing. It's all of the Pisces energy. There's a healing that happens because there's a purging that is happening around beliefs and illusions and deceptions and all of these things. It's about really understanding when I nurture myself through my truth, others' opinions, words, projections don't have the effect that they once did. It's actually healing to continue to walk forward in this journey. Even if people have an opinion and are trying to convince and convert, there's something about it and it changes what you're attracting. You'll still get tested, right? So for some people right now who've been walking this path of authenticity, this is a time now that Neptune is direct and it is squaring this moon and the sun and Juno and Venus, that it can actually, and Saturn is doing this too, it can actually be where we're tested, especially Saturn square Venus, right? This is can be a test of self-determination around, are you going to believe others or are you going to continue to walk in your truth? Are you going to take in those beliefs and internalize them, even though you know that it's not true? It can be where all of a sudden, if you've had dynamics where there's been masochism and you've attracted people who try to punish or humiliate or harm you, um, you're having to stand in your authority and say, no, that is not true for me. That is not in alignment with my authentic path. I've already learned this lesson and I don't have to participate in this anymore. You've shown me who you are right now, and I don't have to try to convince you of my truth because it stands alone, right? It can be like having this relationship where someone is, you don't even realize there's these confusions around every time I say what I need to say, they're telling me that that's not real, that it's this or that I'm not seeing this or that I'm this person or I'm bad or I'm da 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 da. This is about owning your authority and saying, no, I know my truth. That's not true. And I'm not participating. It's like having this shield, right? And it tests you. And you can be in that situation in the past. And like in the past, you would have tried to prove Virgo and to perfect and try to be perfect, that's not true. And no matter what, they are convinced and trying to convince you of something very, very different. This can be a test for some around this. This is about saying, no, absolutely not. That is not in alignment with me. It's about seeing clearly the projections. And behind those projections are people who are overcompensating. Because if they were to actually reflect and take accountability, they would have to look at the truth of something that's going on inside of them. And that can be really scary because it brings up guilt, shame, and judgment around self, right? But this is about not allowing people to use you as a container for that. This, if you're someone who's getting tested because this energy is coming back around, view it as a test, stand in your truth, and keep marching on, right? Knowing Mars and Capricorn, I am not accountable for that person's reaction when I speak my truth. I might have once tried to prove that that wasn't true, but my truth does not need to be defended. It stands on its own. So these are these bottom line core dynamics. For other people, you might just be, this is, whereas that is like trying to start a new evolutionary cycle around this. And so there's this testing. For other people, this can be where you are really confronting what's going on inside of you and really starting to understand your truths. Oh my God, my whole life I was told this, and it became a thing that I did, and it's actually not true, right? And so it just acknowledging it and coming into the awareness is very healing. And so it opens up that journey for you, which journeys also correspond to Sag. So this is actually a very healing new moon. Um, but it can be testing, right? It can be testing self-determination and one's ability to know what's theirs and what's not, knowing how to interrelate um, in a positive way, and also making a correct judgment call when you're seeing the shadows of interrelatedness around convincing, converting, and how that has a negative impact on how, a relational dynamic. That's wanting to culminate. Venus, Juno, Venus balsamic to Juno, Venus, Juno, balsamic to the sun. Okay, so it's teaching us further to expand upon this, right? And it is going to be through the intuition. Even Mercury squaring the nodes with the South Node in Virgo, Mercury's in Sag. If there is something that you are intuiting and you understand it in an instinctual way, it is asking for you to not deny it, to not make an excuse. We are all hardwired to be intuitive. This can be about reclaiming it through not denying it, through not being like, oh my gosh, like, no, that can't be. When we are intuiting something and there's this instinctual response, and we listen to that from within, it's usually because we're being confronted with the actual reality, and it's confronting us with how we might be viewing other people through how we view ourselves. No one would ever do that. That can't be. And so it can start to get into this Virgo territory of denying and excuse making and rationalizing, right? When we honor the instinct and the intuition, and even if it doesn't necessarily make sense how we know it, but we honor that, it always comes up that that was the actual reality of the situation, right? Where we get into the weeds with this is when we don't know the difference from feeling things because it's triggering trauma. And so we're projecting the old traumatic experiences. And so there can be this lesson in understanding this along this journey. And there's clarity around this with the trines that are happening, um, in this chart, and also the squares. I actually really like squares. People view them as like not good or painful or harmful or rough. And yeah, sometimes they can be uncomfortable, but when you are consciously working with this, there's something around squares that it's like there's a pressure to where you instinctually know what it is that you're meant to act on. It's just usually, in my experience, people don't do it because they rationalize it because it induces fear because it's the unknown, it's unknown territory. So the other thing I want to say is if there's something that you are understanding and you just intuit it. I don't know why I know this, but I know this. I feel I feel this. But if I act on this, that's scary for me. There's this fear around it, not fear of safety, but just an inner fear. Lucifer and Virgo can bring this up because it's wanting to create the opposite reality of growth, of listening to ourselves and our intuition. It's also where it can bear light on where we're finding ourselves caught in this pattern, right? So the best way to validate yourself is if there's a hint of fear because you know that you are trusting yourself, maybe you aren't used to doing that, or you know if you create action that it can change a dynamic. If you are trusting in yourself, your intuition, your instinct, and you're speaking from the heart and you are being honest and sincere, you can't go wrong. You will always be able to stand by those choices, no matter if they're negative or positive consequences. Meaning that if you get a reaction that's negative from other people and you're realizing that those are projections, there's still a nurturing quality because you spoke the truth and you're able to stick by that because you know that you did what you felt you were meant to do. And it teaches you about discernment around judgments, right? Making correct judgment calls. Um, so there's a lot with this, and it's about really listening to yourself, um, and what is going on emotionally, and sticking by what you know to be true, right? Because the truth is felt, and like I said, it doesn't need to be defended. We get reactive and defensive whenever it's a belief that we're caught up in. Whenever we're walking in a truth, it's really easy to be like that. No, that's not true. I see that you can't hear me, and that's okay. I can have compassion for you because there must be a lot of trauma, or there must be some wounding around this. There must be some belief that you have that you feel very secure within. And we've all been there, you know? So there's a lot going on with this. So I want you all to work with this. This is a great new moon to fire gaze, scry, journal, meditate, um, to write your list of intentions down around understanding your personal truths and confronting your beliefs that are getting in the way of you moving forward. Um, Getting in the way of growth. It's a great time to write intentions around wanting to expand upon your emotional truths, or maybe you're someone who wants to show up more emotionally honest and not be afraid to express that. So it's setting the intention to give you courage to do that. It's great for setting intentions around self-reflection and understanding what you should be accountable for and what you shouldn't, right? So there's a lot here, and it's very, very healing. Um, to me, there's this quality of the hero's journey of coming back to one's natural, authentic self, and then through that, um, learning how to interrelate in healthier ways, and knowing and discerning what correct judgment is with our relationships. And continuing to validate ourselves in a healthy way, right? Without having to, it's like clearing the static of the noise of others and their beliefs, their opinions, their convincing, their converting. And it's like, no, just like locking in, like, this is my truth. And really, really feeling it, right? That way it's known. It's not just kind of there, it's actually known. I love this actually, energetically. And if you are someone who needs to express yourself, remember that even expressing your truth can be teaching you something about who is safe, who is not, um, who is able to relate to you healthy, to have healthy interrelatedness, and who isn't. Um, and it can bring clarity and awareness around where you might have internalized negative messages and beliefs about yourself, that have affected you in a negative way, in feeling I can't be fully authentic, I can't be fully honest. This is about understanding, like, yes, you can, and it's relating in through natural law, not the distortions. It's through compassion and empathy. But compassion and empathy also doesn't denote continuing to be abused, right? Or continuing to deal with things that can be harmful to our authentic selves, to our emotional body, and our emotional well-being and our, psychological well-being. So this is where we can get these opportunities to really, really practice this journey of showing up fully and authentically through our interactions as we do this and we attract different people and different dynamics. There can be conversations that actually help us expand more upon our authenticity and our emotional truths through that law of relativity. Oh, that's what's true for you. I never even thought about it in that way, or I never even felt it in that way. And oh my gosh, or I wasn't able to connect. That's what I was feeling. And so there can be this unity and diversity. And then there can also just be this beauty and understanding that um, we're all different and unique, and our authenticity shows up differently. Our uniqueness, our individuality, and there's a beauty in that, that we could both experience the same thing and it could be very different for each one of us. And it's kind of cool to look at how that affects the nature of our individual realities and to talk about it and to converse about it and to expand upon it, right? So there's really this teaching quality about this on an emotional and visceral level. But there's also this self-determination and kind of true grit dynamic that comes in with the Mars and Capricorn and like standing up for yourself. Like, no, I'm being true to me and I'm not taking that shit anymore. Or, you know, there's simpatico over here and I'm feeling authentic connection with people and this feels good. And it's because there's a naturalness about, you know, understanding that things are relative and still showing up with compassion and empathy about it. So it's really, to me, a powerful new moon. Um, and there's a lot of adaptability, right? You could pivot on a dime. You could see something isn't really, you're all of a sudden you're intuiting something and you're like, nope, that's a hard no for me. I'm gonna listen to this and I'm gonna go this way. Man, this really wasn't in alignment with my expectations, but I'm gonna trust myself, right? That's that Venus square to Saturn and Pisces that's ruled by Neptune, and Venus is ruled by Jupiter and Cancer. So it's like there's a lot of opportunities for expansion in different ways with this new moon and these energies um, that really promotes a lot of healing, but there's a levity about it because there's so much saggy qualities, right? It's where something can come up that would once bother you, but now you can laugh at how absurd it is. Like, oh my God, like, and I can't believe I used to deal with this or whatever, this is kind of that vibe and that energy. Um, so connect with nature, um, meditate on this, set your intentions, and trust your intuition. Watch the magic unfold. No matter if there's a situation that comes up uncomfortable, remember it can be a soul test of self-determination, right? To continue to walk authentically. All right. I hope you all have a very happy, healing, and blessed new moon in Sagittarius. And until next time.